You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Right now on our Total Wellness Tuesday show, I want to get into the direct link between stress, infertility, and weight gain. These are three very common things, not just in women that come into my practice, but both men and women. And when I explain it to them, when I literally just sit down with them and I go through it step by step by step, and it's not difficult to comprehend, a light bulb goes on. They then, for the very first time, understand why they're having difficulty across the board. Maybe getting pregnant or just with kind of sex hormones and what they represent in general. We'll talk about that as well. The signs to look for with stress, of course, why that plays into it. And then overall, like, why can't you lose weight like you were able to in the past? And we want to go over that right now. So the best way, the way that I explain this, whether it's during a Skype consultation or it's in my Boston practice, it's letting people know that your body has two main steroid hormone pathways. And I know that when I say the word steroid, people think about kind of bodybuilders and testosterone and like building their body up. But that's just one part of it. That's just part of the entire steroid hormone pathway is this thing called testosterone. What I want to explain today is it's a very delicate balance between actually stress hormones and anabolic hormones. So basically like catabolic, when I say catabolic today, I mean stress. And what I mean by catabolism and catabolic is the body's essentially breaking down. So, I mean, the body is actually so stressed, it's using muscle tissue, organ tissue, bone, anything it can to use the minerals, amino acids, and sugars to keep the body moving, to really keep it fueled because of a high stress level. And I'll use the word sympathetic nervous system today as well. All that means is fight or flight, okay? It just means fight or flight, means you're stressed. When you feel stressed, you start to feel maybe more anxious, or your heart rate's going, or you can't calm your body down. You might have difficulty sleeping at night. Your libido might go down. We're going to talk about those things right now. So essentially what happens is when people get into this sympathetic nervous system state, this high fight or flight, their body begins to shift hormone away from the anabolic hormones to the catabolic hormone, which is cortisol. So namely, cortisol is the main catabolic hormone. One other hormone that plays into this is a hormone called aldosterone. So there's a dozen different ways to pronounce aldosterone. It's just ALDO and then STERONE. So all the health practitioners out there listening as well, we're going to kind of go into this, but it's going to be really, as always, every Cabral concept is meant for every single human. They need to know about their body. That's what we're teaching today. So in the beginning, when the body gets very stressed, it also raises aldosterone levels. When aldosterone levels increase, that can also increase blood pressure. And that's normal. That's a normal response. That's why I'm able to help people lower their blood pressure so easily, because I understand why it's happening. And so that leads to some vasoconstriction. It just simply means that your body and the arteries and everything starts to get tight and tense. And that just gets you ready for fight or flight. It gets you ready to either run at something or run away from it or freeze. But basically, those are your responses. So we know very systematically when you're in a higher stress state, and again, I've talked about this before, but the stress can come from GI-based issues, candida, SIBO, Crohn's, colitis, anything inflammation going on with the gut. That affects the stress levels in the body because that's stressing out in body internally. But then we also have stress from viruses, from illnesses. And then we have stress from the stress that we most think about the most, which is family, relationships, work, our life in general. But really, there's three main types of stress. There's others, but those are the three main ones that we look at in my practice. And again, my practice is a blend between all forms of medicine. There is no one form of medicine. People ask me like, how did you learn this? Or what school did you go to learn this, this, and this? That's not what it's about, because no one discipline teaches this. It's impossible. It's just like, that's not how you become or you learn these things and rise to a certain level in anything. You just have to study everything. Like that's the bottom line. So if you want to know how to help people the most or how to achieve something in your practices, you need to look outside of that as well. So I studied traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, functional medicine, naturopathic medicine, and then old school naturopathy as well. And so when I looked at these specific things, I started to understand why we have body types, why we look at the human body a certain way, and then also, of course, the state-of-the-art medicine, which I test for this every single day. I'm going to give you some lab tests that you can look at as well that we do all the time in my practice, again, for stress, for fertility, or for weight gain. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, there's one pathway. We just spoke about that, the fight or flight pathway. That's cortisol, and that's another hormone called aldosterone. So besides that, now, we'll call that the left-hand pathway. On the right-hand pathway, we then have DHEA, we have testosterone, and we have estrogen. Now, we think of those as the sex hormones, as the main male and female hormones. Now, again, men have estrogen and they have testosterone, okay? Women have estrogen and they have testosterone. They have both. So women need actually higher levels of testosterone, but relative to being a woman, right? So that's really important to look at. But they still need the testosterone because the testosterone leads to the good libido, the stamina, the feel good, the alpha hormones, the ambition, the drive, the take charge, the confidence, the self-image. That's what testosterone does for your body. So, women need that just as much as men. Men are just more prone to feeling it because they're more in tune with saying like, oh, I need my testosterone levels checked. But women need to have those checked as well. And then estrogen. Estrogen, when it becomes dominant, that's not a good thing either. But the levels, they have to be adequate enough too for both men and women. Okay. And then there's this thing right above it called DHEA. That's a really important one to look at. It's called dihydroepiandrosterone. And believe me, I know you're saying you're talking about all these hormones and these big words, but stay with me just for a moment. I'm going to pull it all together. So this thing that comes right above testosterone, and then testosterone eventually leads to androstenedione, which then leads to estrogen or estradiol as well. And there's three main forms of estrogen in women. We'll just talk about estradiol for right now. And the reason is that's about 80% of all female hormone right there. Okay, so when we look at this, DHEA is actually the feeder for testosterone and estrogen. But here's the interesting thing. When your body becomes stressed, it actually starts to steal hormone away from DHEA. And when it does that, your body then has enough cortisol to be able to deal with the stress, but then you don't have enough of the testosterone and potentially maybe not enough of the estrogen. So think about that. Start to think about that because I'm going to come back to that in just one moment. But also think about this. The only precursor to cortisol is progesterone on the left-hand pathway, okay? So now I just said the precursor to testosterone and estrogen is DHEA, but the precursor to cortisol is progesterone. And your body gives preferential treatment to producing cortisol. And why would it do that? Well, think about this. When you're in fight or flight, like let's just say 20,000 years ago, famine, drought, war, enemies attacking, anything like that, whatever was going on 20,000 years ago, right? Shelter, anything that you needed, your body would know that it had to go into survival mode. Okay, again, keep that in mind for just one moment as well. And what happens is your body gives you preferential treatment to make enough cortisol to push you through those survival-based times. But now, since progesterone is the only precursor to cortisol, what happens is women and men, but women especially, they start to run lower now on progesterone. So now, hopefully you're starting to see there's going to be an issue with fertility. Why would there be an issue with fertility? Because a lot of women, when we run their labs, and I run thousands of functional medicine labs, and 9 out of 10 times, if there's an issue with female hormones, the estrogen looks perfectly normal. But the progesterone is low. So now women have all the signs of high estrogen. The bloating, the water retention, lowered mood, anxiety, just not feeling great 5 to 7 days or so before day one of menstruation. But when we run their estrogen levels, it's normal for those last 5 to 7 days. The problem is progesterone is dipped too much. And in all the cases that I work with women, what we have to do is then we have to look at cortisol. Cortisol ends up being higher, or norepinephrine, or one of those stress-based hormones that is then stealing the cortisol, right? Or stealing the progesterone to make cortisol. So So now if you're in a functional medicine practice or you're a health practitioner right now, you say, okay, well, do I need to put a woman on progesterone? Is that how I'm going to help her become pregnant? Or what do I need to do? I need to help the body become less stressed. Interesting when you look at it that way. Because if the body now is calling for less cortisol, guess what isn't going to give itself over to cortisol? Progesterone. Because if the body isn't as stressed, another way of saying this is if the body's not as stressed, it will be able to not ask for as much cortisol, which means progesterone will get to keep more of itself. It won't self-sacrifice itself to then be converted to what's called 17-hydroxyprogesterone, to then be converted to 11-deoxycortisol, which then becomes cortisol. So when you look at it, progesterone is really the thing that becomes sacrificed for cortisol. And when things get bad enough, when you become stressed long enough, meaning like days and weeks and months and maybe even years, well, then DHEA starts to go down as well. Because if we look at this whole hormone pathway, cholesterol, which starts things, there's acetyl coenzyme A, but we won't get into that now. Cholesterol is basically a hormone, and it leads to pregnenolone. And then your body can say, okay, at pregnenolone, which is kind of like the mother hormone, it can shift towards the cortisol, the catabolic pathway, okay, and move over to progesterone, which becomes cortisol. Or it can stay over on the anabolic side, which builds muscle, libido, strength, stamina, self-confidence, ambition. That's on the DHEA, testosterone, estrogen side. So now we're looking at, okay, what is the link now between the stress, the infertility, and the weight gain? Here it is right here. When your body is stressed, when it's in the sympathetic nervous system, when it's in fight or flight, it becomes catabolic. It is using up and it's asking for more cortisol. When you ask for more cortisol, your body only has so much hormone to go around, but survival state stress will always get preferential treatment. Your body will then shift hormone, a preferential amount of hormone, over to progesterone, which will then be shifted down to cortisol. That keeps your body in fight or flight. That gives you enough hormone to get through any situation that you're in. So now what happens is women become estrogen dominant. So they have enough estrogen, but they don't have enough progesterone. Why is progesterone needed? Well, progesterone is needed in the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle. So that means if you're looking for implementation of that embryo, if you're looking to carry that pregnancy through the first 6 weeks, 12 weeks, you need higher levels of progesterone. If you've ever had trouble with infertility, with getting pregnant, again, this goes for men and women. I'll bring in men in just 1 second. It is highly likely, there is an issue with too low of progesterone. And I'm only telling you that, and I can only tell you that in 2017 now, after 5 years of thousands of functional medicine lab tests. I mean, it's very, very clear cut. And again, I'm not the only doctor saying this. There are others. There's just not as many people who look into it the same exact way. Again, I'm not the only one. But what I do is I help women from this standpoint and they get pregnant. I mean, that's basically the bottom line, is because we're not giving them hormones. We don't want to do that. That's not a root cause. Yeah, root cause is low progesterone, no doubt about it. But what's one more below that? I'm always asking why. Okay, you have low progesterone. True. Should I give you a bioidentical hormone? I don't think so. I don't think there's a reason for that. Here's why. I know that your body's producing enough hormone, just too much of it is being shifted over to cortisol. What if I were to help you decrease stress, decrease sympathetic nervous system overdrive? Then your body wouldn't be asking for as much cortisol, so then you get to keep more of your own progesterone. Perfect, that solves that. Now, how does that also lead to lower fertility in men? Lower testosterone, lower libido, potentially lower sperm count. When your body is stressed, guys, this includes you. When your body's stressed, you're making less of those sex hormones. You're making less of the DHEA and less of the testosterone. Okay, that's part of the survival mechanism as well. Why does that happen for both men and women? Libido is going to lower during times of high cortisol, and the reason is it's a survival-based time. It's genetically programmed in us. There is no way nature would want you to bring a child, and that's what obviously our sex hormones are for, procreation. Our nature would not want us to bring a child into the world if we were in famine, drought, war, any survival-based situation. It makes sense at a deep cellular level. It makes complete sense. Okay, so now how does this then lead to weight gain? Well, if your body is in that stress stage, okay, you're in survival-based mode. Your body believes there isn't enough food, there isn't enough water, or there's some type of survival situation. It's going to slow metabolism. It's going to slow testosterone, which is a great fat burner of itself. And it's going to make you essentially lower your metabolism and hold on to more body fat. And it's a very smart thing your body's doing. It's not messing up. At no point has your body messed up. This is a beautiful set of chemistry at its best. That's it. It's beautiful in its simplicity. You're stressed. Your body says, you know what? I want you to be able to survive on 800 calories. That's it. I want you to be able to survive on almost nothing. So I'm going to lower your metabolism so low that you only need to eat a little bit and we'll still keep you alive. It's amazing what the human body can do. That's why all these diets that are out right now, they can be fine for the short term, but for the long term, very detrimental on your metabolism. You have to think smart. Completely eliminating fruit from your diet forever is insane. Literally, it's one of the most insane things I've ever heard, since fruit and vegetables are the antioxidants that keep away cancer, that keep away disease. I'm sorry, but bacon and butter do not keep away disease. Like, at no point has there been a bacon and butter study that says, oh, bacon and butter reduces your chances of cancer. No. Fruits and vegetables do, bacon and butter does not. I mean, let's be realistic. We have to think about things from a human genetic, built-in deep cellular response to our environment. Problem is this. It's been too long since we've really had to live outside. We've really had to fend for ourselves. And so we're missing that communal part of us that is intimately attached with nature and the environment. And that includes stress, that includes our food, that includes what we should be eating, our sleep, everything. All of it's connected. So when I tell you there's a direct link between stress, infertility, and weight gain, I hopefully showed you today that when your body starts to get into that sympathetic nervous system mode, when it starts to overproduce stress hormones such as glucocorticoids, namely cortisol, such as norepinephrine, also called adrenaline, okay? When it starts to produce these things, your body just starts to go into survival mode. And when that happens, it lowers libido, it lowers ambition, it lowers drive, it lowers mood. It lowers all of these things. You are in a heightened state. You can become anxious, you can become overwhelmed, you can wake up throughout the night, you can have troubles regulating blood sugar, you can start to sweat more. There's all these things that just happen. People think that I'm a mind reader or that I'm a psychic or all sorts of things when they talk with me in my practice, whether it's over Skype or again, in office. And it's not. I just know the human body really inside and out. And I'm not saying that I've mastered it. I'm really not. But I work every day to learn more about it because I find it unbelievably and infinitely fascinating how this works. And I know that the deeper I go into this, the more I can help people. And I'm telling you right now, there's always an answer. People think, oh, it's just genetic. No, everyone in my family had this. It's not. Yes, it is genetic, but everyone in your family just suffered from this thing. That's it. There's always a reason why. It took me a long time to find my reason, but I'm dedicated to helping others find theirs, even if it takes them a year to figure it out. Great. So it took a year. And let's just say you're 45, so you figured it out at 46. Well, great. You now have the next half of your life to live. That's why this is so important. Even if you figured it out at 65, great. Well, then maybe you have another 30 years or more. Because if you can live another 30 years, I'm telling you right now, with gene editing, with all of these things that we're going to be able to do, stem cells, there's a minimum you will be able to add to your life of at least a decade. I'm almost guaranteeing that. I wish I could guarantee it. Almost guaranteeing it because I read the research. I see what's coming. I see what's coming. And again, I'm not the best geneticist in the world because I'm not a geneticist, but I have colleagues that are geneticists. They show me what's coming. And it's literally being able to gene edit for cancer, gene edit for Alzheimer's, all of these things, they are coming. They are just keep yourself healthy now. That's what it's all about. So I could literally talk about this for hours and days. So what I want to do is I want to keep it at that. If there's additional questions, you can always ask me your questions. How does this maybe relate to you? Just go to stephencabral.com/ask Cabral, and I'll be able to answer those on our weekend house call editions. But again, hopefully you saw today how stress leads to the lower hormones, which leads to infertility, which leads to the stress also leading then to the weight gain as well. Unless you get yourself out of that survival-based mode, unless you pull yourself out of the sympathetic nervous system and switch back into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest, relaxation, and rejuvenation, unless you can do that, you're not going to be able to heal. You're not going to be able to lose the weight, and you're not going to be able to boost your own hormones naturally, okay? So now how do you test to see if you're in this? A simple hair tissue mineral analysis will tell you if you're in the predominantly fight or flight based state because it shows electrolytes in your body. That's it. Very, very simple. Calcium to magnesium, sodium to potassium. Really beautiful test. And then if you want to see your cortisol levels, you want to see your estrogen levels, you want to see your progesterone, you want to see your testosterone, you run the adrenal hormone test. Very simple. 4 tubes of saliva during the day. So simple to do. Literally, you can just carry it around, keep it in your pocket. Okay, so what does that do? Well, women are going to test this 5 days or so before they get their period, day 1 of their period. Men can do it any day of the week, but everyone should do it on a normal stress day. That will show you cortisol levels. It will show you how high or low your cortisol is. It will show you DHEA, show you your testosterone, show you your progesterone, show you your estrogen. Amazing test. Amazing. They're both great. Hair tissue mineral analysis and the adrenal hormone stress test. You can do them through saliva-based testing or just a couple snips of hair. We'll link them up in the show notes without a doubt. As always, all your resources are available. And today's episode is 516. So if you just go to stephencabral.com/516, we will link up those 2 lab tests. Take care, everyone. Hope you have a great day. And please do feel free to share this particular episode with anyone it could help. I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stephencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Stephen Cabral. And that's Stephen with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.